But we have to post on.
I think so. Are we recording?
Okay, good evening, everybody. The meeting will come to order at 7 p.m. Sunny, would you do roll call for us, please?
Commissioner Phillips, Chair.
Here,
Yes,
oh, the Mr. What did you think?
Commissioner.
Commissioner
Oh, Commissioner.
Phillips,
Okay.
Chair. Commissioner Grant Rucker, Vice Chair.
Here.
Commissioner Freed,
Here.
Secretary. Commissioner Richards,
Here.
Commissioner Phillips,
Here.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're going to do approval of the agenda tonight. Thank you, Colleen.
Click on participants, it says 3, and then there's gonna be admit all.
Oh.
Okay. So, for approval of the agenda, are there any amendments or additions to the agenda tonight? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I second.
It is moved and seconded to approve the agenda as is. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The agenda is approved as is. And then we have approval of the minutes. We've got 2 separate meeting minutes to approve tonight. The minutes of the December 8 meeting were previously distributed. And are there any corrections that need to be made to the December 8 minutes? If there are no corrections, is there a motion to approve the minutes for December 8?
I move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved and seconded to approve the minutes for December 8. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote. And Colleen, I'm abstaining from this vote because I was not here on December 8. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes for December 8 are approved as distributed. And then we have the minutes for the January 12th meeting that have been previously distributed. Are there any corrections for the January 12th minutes? If there are no corrections, is there a motion to approve the minutes for January 12th?
Make a motion that we approve the January 12th minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved and seconded to approve minutes for January 12th. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Abstain. I was not here that day.
And so minutes for January 12 are approved as distributed. And so we are going to be moving into the public hearing, but we have to wait until 7:05. So we've got just about a minute before we can do that.
Perhaps, Madam Chair, if I could just say, if you plan on speaking, I need you to fill one of these out. You're Brad.
I'm Brad.
Brad, I'm Sunny. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
We've been exchanging email. Do you want one? You're gonna speak? Okay. Sounds good to me.
Thank you, Sonny.
You're welcome.
Lines are already in.
Yeah.
So the public hearing is regarding the proposed lot split of Tilly's Restaurant and the RV park. The applicant, Mark Kuhn, and he is the owner of Orinoco Enterprises LLC, represented by Brad Reese of G Cubed Engineering. And we are going to open up the public hearing at 7:05 p.m. And Sunny already requested whoever wants to speak to fill out the paper. But at this point in time, we are gonna do the first call for public comments. And I've already been cued that you are gonna be doing the presentation, Brad. And so I would ask you to go ahead and step to the podium and give us your presentation if you would, please.
All right, I'm Brad Breeze with G Cubed Engineering and Surveying. I'm helping Mark here try to get the split approved. Does everybody have a copy of the survey and an aerial photo? Or do you need a copy? There's only one in your packet, but if you need a bigger one, I have one.
If you have a bigger one, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Anybody else want one?
Thank you.
If you need one.
Packet, got an extra.
I got two left. Pick and choose. I got copies of the survey as well, but it's just that blank. So I guess what we're proposing is to split the Tilly's Restaurant from the RV park. Right now, they're currently on one parcel and we just want to get it, so Mark can get it sold. Correct?
Correct.
Yep, and you already have a buyer.
Yep.
So I believe there should be no zoning issues. Everything should meet setbacks, size requirements, all that. Is there any questions? Yes,
Does the RV park have its own, maybe it's in here, its own septic system, or is this gonna take place after we move to city?
everything should be set up for the sewer and water right now with the city, right?
The RV park's on holding tanks right now.
Oh, it is,
Okay,
okay,
your main line just went through there and they put a hookup right next to that. So as soon as you're up and running, we crush that tank and hook right into your line.
okay,
And Tilly's will come to the south. They got both connections ready to go. And I'm taking care of all that for the new buyer and everything. So we're just waiting on you to get her going and we'll hook up immediately.
okay. So is the plan to wait till the hookup happens or do
Selling
it
to
now?
her now,
Okay,
but she knows that it's gonna get done. That's in the contract with her. That Orinoco Enterprises is paying for the sewer hookup.
okay,
We're already on water.
all right, perfect, thank you.
And the new split line actually incorporates that. There's no overlap there. There was a question, wasn't there, Sonny, about a shed?
Yes,
And the shed does meet, and I double checked my shots today. The shed itself in that corner is 12 feet from the new property lines.
okay. And which parcel, that's gonna stay on the Tilly side?
Yeah, no, on the RV
RV
park.
park. Okay.
I know that I had one question in here. Let me see where it is. There was a place in your description where you were talking about the line between the restaurant and the RV park in 52, and you referred to that being to the west of the property, but I believe it's to the east of the property.
That was in the contract report.
Oh, that's the Stan Tech
Yeah.
report.
Okay,
Never
'cause I was
mind
gonna
that.
say. I think so.
I knew I saw it, but it was not your report, so.
I did not see the Stan Tech report.
Didn't I send you the whole packet? Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe,
Okay, I'm
maybe
sorry.
not. Either way, I didn't see it. I didn't review it. so.
Okay. Oh, well, there are conditions, so you'll want to be able to.
What are the
see that.
conditions?
We'll go through all of those and the findings of fact as well.
And just a question for clarification, when you said that you're already on water, is that the whole parcel
Yep.
combined is
Two,
on
yeah.
water?
There's two lines, there's two meters, Tilly's is on their own meter and the RV park's on their own meter. And that's what that shed's for, that's my meter shed, that's where the water connections come out for the RV park, so I blow them out and stuff.
Okay.
And it can keep that heated, so
Okay.
there's no issues in the wintertime.
In
But yes, we have our
Minnesota?
own meters.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Can I ask a quick question here? Are you selling the RV part or the Tilly's part?
Tilly's,
The
Tilly's.
Okay, I
Yep.
gotta just make sure I get my notes
Yep.
right.
And so while Brad is looking at that, does anybody else have a question perhaps that Mark or Brad may be able to answer about this?
I do have a quick question. When you currently have the two combined properties, when people are actually using the RV park, do you run all the business side of it out of Tilly's when people are?
No, there's an office in the RV park, there's
Okay.
showers and everything's completely separate.
So it's still gonna be out there, there's not gonna be any,
All, yep, yep, Tilly's will be Tilly's and the RV park will be Tilly's RV Resort. Two different tax numbers. All employee numbers and stuff, all different.
But it will be called Tilly's RV Park?
That's what it is called,
Okay.
yep. And then Tilly's is called Tilly's Orinoco LLC now for her. That is the new running name.
Okay.
And she's fun, Heather. It's
She's a nice
very-
lady, she's gonna be nice, and I think you guys will like her in this town. And being a buyer, she's gonna be here for a while.
He's gonna give you a couple of minutes more, Brad, if you need them. I know this is like a quick read for you.
Well, and quite honestly too, I'm expecting that there will be conversation between Brad and Joe Palin when we get to the planners
When we get to that place.
report. Yeah,
Mhm.
so.
Does the commission have any other questions?
Want me to address these now, or is he gonna read the planner's report and then I address them?
We'll do the planner's report. We'll talk about the conditions and the findings of fact, and we'll have a discussion following that if you like. Is that good?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Not at this time. but- Are there any other people that would like to make public comment at this time? This is the second call for public comments. Anybody on the? And the third call for public comments. So we will close the public hearing at 7:13 PM. And at this time, if we could have Joe Palin speak to the planner's report.
I will. Good evening. You do have a report from Phil Carlson in the packet tonight. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at it. What's proposed is a lot split. The lot split is fairly straightforward. We did have a chance, myself and Phil, to look at the proposed lot split. The recommendation is that the Planning Commission approve the lot split with several conditions. Those conditions are discussed on page 4 of the report. The first condition would be that the property owner grant a 10-foot wide drainage and utility easement on the west and south property lines. The reason for that is that's immediately adjacent to some sanitary sewer that's serving both the parcels involved in the lot split as well as the adjacent parcels. The area is fairly tight to the property line, and the addition of the requested 10-foot drainage and utility easement would facilitate the operation and maintenance of those facilities moving forward. The second lot split, or the second condition would be just the verification of the existing buildings on the property. And that they meet the setback requirements noted in the planning report. It sounds like you did take a look at that and verify those shots. Obviously, we had a survey with an aerial photo, but I think what Phil was asking is just the verification that that parcel or that shed was indeed where it appeared on the aerial photo, and that it does meet the lot split requirements. And did I hear that comment?
Yeah. Yes, I
okay.
verified it was 12 feet, and I can reissue a new survey showing the buildings with the setbacks. That's not a problem.
Okay. And the last comment really deals with the water service coming into the parcel. Our plans don't illustrate or we don't have information exactly as to where that water service was run between the main and the Tilly's restaurant and the RV park. And what we want to, the concern that we have is that that main for the RV park be included in the easement agreement between the two parcels, and so that if there is an issue with that water service in the future, the RV park's water service, that they have the right via private easement to address that deficiency should it occur in the future. And so the survey exhibit doesn't illustrate where that water service is, and if it is indeed within parcel A, like we suspect it is it included in the 66-foot wide easement that parcel A would provide parcel B for access and utility and maintenance purposes?
Water line comes straight from your hydrant, north side of the building, into the shed. They split it there, it goes to Tilly's. They're on their own meter. They have their own shut off. So, and the RV park is metered inside that building, and they have their own shut off there. There's one line coming in, split off
At that hydrant rate.
at the shed,
In the shed?
in the shed,
Also, they split at the shed.
bottom of the shed, outside. Both shut offs are right outside the building. So they're all on their separate. If anything happens to Tilly's, we can shut that one off. The RV parks continues to run. If anything happens, I got 4 shut offs on the RV park, so I can stay open, move people to the back, fix whatever leak out here. I got shut offs so we can maintain and keep business going as normal, so.
Mark, the question or concern is does that water service run through parcel A within an area that is outside the 66-foot easement?
Where's your 66-foot
Right
easement?
here. It's the access easement. So, yes, the answer is yes. So we will try at the grant a utility easement along that north line.
That's what that was the concern. And if you would do that, then that concern would be alleviated.
No. I can add that to the survey and write a description for it. That shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Did you have any concerns about adding or providing a 10-foot wide drainage and utility easement along the west and south boundary of the two parcels?
You already have one on the west for People's Co-op and GovCom. The only one you'd need is coming from the west to the east.
Well, we'd like a dedicated public utility easement, I guess.
West line, that whole west line's got like a 20-footer going behind it. The whole west line of that property's got a utility easement on it.
I believe that's the case for the parcels to the west, but based on my search, there isn't a drainage and utility easement. So I think there's a 10-foot on the platted parcels to the west, but the Tilly's parcel, I think, doesn't have a drainage and utility easement on it, based on what I know.
They do. The guy paid me $5,000 for
So again, if that's a public drainage and utility easement, that's fine if it's been recorded, but if it's not, we would
Well,
request that it be,
Nobody's ever
provided.
talked about a drainage issue. You
What's
know,
that?
Before we had sewer. It's a public, or it's public utilities. GovCom's back there, People's Co-op's back there. There was never an easement back there, and the guy gave me $5,000 to run his cable through there. From Pine Island from BevCom 20 years ago.
Okay, so that might be a
It's
private
scheduled.
easement.
What's that?
That could be a private easement.
No, it's open up for everybody. Peoples went through it and so did BevCom. So I don't know what you're not seeing or who didn't do the paperwork, but that's been in there since I bought the place, right when I started the RV park.
What year was that?
Well, maybe we can ask the your surveyor to add the easement to the drawings if he can find documentation to support it.
Yeah, that's no issue at all. It's there. There's a
Okay.
lot of wires going through there, so nobody's gonna bother it.
Yeah, I'll add it to the survey and we'll write a description to it.
Okay. On both the west and south side?
Are you okay with the south side?
Yes, I'll say it's fine.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we'll add it in.
Okay, thank you.
That's 10 feet on mine and 10 feet on the cities is what you're using.
I'm sorry, Mark.
For the easement, you're using 10 foot off the property line on the city's property with the ball fields and 10 foot of mine. Or you're running it all on mine because it's going right down the property. It's on your property.
Right. It's close is
So
the
what do I
thing.
need to give an easement?
It's
Sewer lines
close
in
to,
the city's ground,
right. It is close to the
10 feet away.
utility, the sewer utility is close to the property line, and typically when we plat any lot, we get a easement surrounding the parcel for drainage and utility easements, and so this is consistent with that, and it allows us a little bit of flexibility moving forward if we have to
Yeah.
do any work there.
Well, last guy paid $5,000. You're fine. We're good with it.
I'm assuming then we have to record that, right? Or
Who's gonna be, my question is, I can draft it on the survey. But who's gonna be drafting the deed to record that? Since it's going to the public, is the city gonna draft that? Or does Mark's attorney have to?
I provided a template for the easement. Basically, all you gotta do is incorporate the legal description.
You use this template?
Yeah, there's a template that was provided as part of the planner's report.
I got it here, can you send that to me, Sonny, in a Word doc?
Certainly.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look through it. If I see anything, we'll add her back and forth. I'm sure it's just fine and we can add that
Yeah.
right
Yeah, we can work through that.
in. Okay. Same for the water, do a separate one for the water line going to the shed.
That doesn't have to be a public drainage and utility easement. That's really an easement between two private entities from my perspective.
Okay, then we'll just take care of that. Yep.
Is that everything for you, Joe?
I believe unless the committee or the applicant has any questions.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting you off if you had more to say.
No?
Okay, so we're opening it up to the commission for discussion. And Joe, I asked this question to Brad earlier and it was a misdirected question. On page 2 of your planning report, in the first paragraph underneath planning and zoning issues, the last line reads that Highway 52 is to the west of the property, and I believe it's to the east of the property, is that correct?
Just taking a look.
First paragraph, last line.
Yeah, Lake Shady is, or Lake Shady, Avenue and TH 52 are to the east of the subject parcels.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion among the commissioners or any questions that you have? For the engineer, the city engineer, or
So that wasn't in the findings of fact, that was in a separate narrative, right?
Those are conditions.
yeah, those were three conditions of approval of the lot split.
Right,
Mhm.
but
We haven't done,
misidentifying 52 was in those conditions or?
no, it was in,
It's in a
the-
separate
it was in the
narrative.
Stan Tech planning report.
Okay,
Yeah,
so not in the condition.
No,
or the
this
findings
was-
of fact.
this was just a clarification about the report itself.
So looking at the three conditions, we had the one that was the easement agreement with the cities for the 10 foot. That was the first one.
Mhm.
You know, making sure that's done, the recording. The second one was the verifying the survey, and it sounds like we're pretty good there on the required setbacks. That was more the existing building sizes. Then it was, the third one was taking care of the water line on the restaurant parcel there. Looking at that 66 foot wide easement. Now, the one that we had talked about where the water is going from the hydrant in and then splitting, is that part of number 3, or would that have to be a separate fourth finding of fact that they take care of making sure that easement for that line is also set up?
I took
That's
that to be part of 3, that's
Three?
where, they've said that the water line is not within the easement, but that you will grant a utility right to Tilly's LLC to, if
I'll
they need
recheck
to.
our field data and make sure, we'll center the easement on that, whether it crosses or however it goes through. So I'll just have to re-verify where that line goes in relationship to the property lines, but we'll get an easement drafted between the two parties.
Okay. So that would cover that piece then.
We'll do it as a separate easement from the 66, because the 66 is purely for access purposes.
Okay, so it is recommended by the Orinoco City Consultants and staff to approve the lot split for Orinoco Enterprises LLC with the conditions that Joe has read. And so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and read through the findings of fact. Number 1, the owner of the property at 1175 Lake Shady Avenue South proposes to split the property into 2 parcels as depicted on the certificate of survey from G-Cubed Engineering Surveying Planning dated November 30, 2022. Number 2, Orinoco City Code requirements in section 151.002 require parcels resulting from a lot split to meet minimum lot sizes and setbacks, to have access to public streets, and to consider impacts on neighboring properties. Number 3, the property is currently zoned B2 Highway Commercial. Minimum requirement or minimum required lot size is 20,000 square feet. Required front setback is 15 feet, side setback 0 feet, and side setback 10 feet. Number 4, the proposed parcel A and parcel B are 1.29 acres and 4.2 acres in size respectively, according to the submitted survey, both meeting the minimum lot size requirement. Number 5, the certificate of survey appears to show that the existing restaurant building and shed on the property would meet the required setbacks, which will be verified with a revised survey. Number 6, each of the lots resulting from the lot split will have frontage and access on Lake Shady Avenue South, a public street, as well as an ingress, egress easement for cross access between the parcels. Number 7, there is an existing underground water service on the restaurant parcel serving the RV campground parcel. The location of this service is to be verified by survey or the easement modified with the review and approval of the city engineer. Number 8, the proposed lot split does not change the uses on the property, and there would not be any negative impacts to surrounding properties as a direct result of the lot split. Number 9, the city of Orinoco needs easements on the property in order to provide water and sewer service to the property and neighboring properties. Requesting 10-foot wide drainage and utility easements is necessary and reasonable in conjunction with this lot split. And that is all of the findings of fact. Is there any further discussion at this time? If there is no further discussion, is there a motion to approve the lot split for Orinoco Enterprises LLC?
Motion to approve.
Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The lot split for Orinoco Enterprises LLC is approved.
Thank you.
By this,
Yep.
Yes, and this is just a reminder that the Orinoco Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory commission. And we will be forwarding our recommendation to the city council for their consideration at their next meeting on February 21st, as the council is the final authority in this decision. So thank you, gentlemen,
Thank you.
and congratulations. So the next item of business is new business. And under new business, we have candidate interviews. So first up, you must be Krista. Hi, Krista and Paul. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
It was nice to meet you both.
You'll see us again.
Okay, look forward to it. First off, we want to thank you for your interest in putting your names forth to fill this vacancy on the commission. And we're thrilled because we have one vacancy and we have 2 applicants, and that's pretty awesome of you guys. So thank you for that. And we've had an opportunity to review your applications, but I want to invite you to share a little bit about yourselves and how it is that you see yourselves serving for the Orinoco Planning and Zoning Commission. So if I may, Paul, we'd like ladies to go first, if that's okay with you. Krista, would you like to stand up and share a little bit about yourself? Thank you.
My name is Krista Kier, and I have been a resident of Orinoco since 2013. So our family built our house here, and we have been here ever since. I'm a native of Rochester and have worked in many different capacities, mostly in healthcare education. So I did the first part of my career at Mayo Clinic, and now I work for OMC as their document coordinator. So my job is to quality control all the documents that OMC handles in our healthcare organization. So anything, processes, procedures, information sheets, instruction sheets, those all go through me. So my skills, the way I would like to serve is, I think I have a lot of the skills that could probably lend to a planning and zoning committee. I'm very organized. I like to be active in my community. We've been very blessed to be here and have the community support us. And so part of my philosophy moving forward in the rest of my life is finding the ways to serve others that people have served me. So it's very important to me. Right now, I sit on the board of directors for Briar Tomorrows, which is the local childhood cancer group that serves childhood cancer families in Rochester and the surrounding area. So it doesn't conflict with anything that I would be involved with here, but I've been doing that for 3 years. So I have experience sitting on a board, attending meeting minutes, all those things are in my wheelhouse. So that is just a little bit about me, and I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. And we love it here and are excited. I'm excited for the opportunity. So thank you guys very much.
I have a question. How old are your kids, Krista?
Jacob is 15 and Hannah is 10. So,
Very cool.
great kids. I like to show them too that it's important to be part of local government and see how things work. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Krista.
you bet.
And Paul?
Well, it's always good to see new blood come around. Never hurts. I've been around since 1990. Previously been on the city council. I was on planning and zoning. Was it Colleen's dad that was on planning and zoning? Harley? Him and I were on it together for quite a few years. And sitting here watching Mark Keene selling his peddling that property off that at the time, planning and zoning had the right to approve that without city council. And that was approved without city council's permission to put that RV park there, but it was all put in the planning and zoning space that he's gonna have all his biker buddies there. It's gonna be the worst thing ever happened in the city, and you can see it hasn't. There's a lot of good decisions made, all of the new neighborhoods that everybody enjoys today were put in place through some of the stuff that when I was on planning and zoning, so. Yeah, we had 5 kids and lived down the street a block. Due to be retired here in a few weeks, and yeah, so
Very exciting.
we're just looking forward to spending some time with something to do.
Oh, thank you. How old are your 5 kids, Paul?
Well, the oldest one's 47. That'd be my wife's. My wife had 3 and I had 2, and we said we didn't need any more. Mine are 45 and 43, so. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So do the commissioners have any questions for the candidates? Not everybody at once now.
I would ask them both, what interests each of you the most about being a member of planning and zoning?
I myself, I just been looking forward to city sewer coming to town, city water. It's time for Orinoco to grow with the rest of the region. And it's to be done in a constructive way. It's really hard in the years that it's out of planning and zoning of getting people to put the brakes on things so we can get things in place. And that was a real challenge when it comes to needing water and sewer to suit the neighborhoods so they could be developed the way they were.
I would have to echo all comments. It's really exciting to see what you guys have already done, all the hard work, watching the sewer get put in. And I think I would be interested because I can see that in the next few years, I really think Orinoco's gonna have a lot of opportunities for growth. And I just see, the ideas of some more commerce and how the city handles that and how we make those decisions, and how we can counsel the city in researching those things. I see it as an exciting opportunity. This really interests me, and anything to do with maps and planning and research is really something that I like to do. So really finding out all the details of a plan in progress, digging into the code, those types of things kind of sparked my interest. So I applied.
Anyone else?
Thank you both.
What do you, I guess, what do you think the biggest challenge is gonna be going forward?
It's gonna be, that's hard to say. There's gonna be a lot of, I think Orinoco's gonna draw a lot of interest. You know, is it gonna remain a bedroom community? I don't know, it's pretty close to Rochester. I can picture it being kind of act like a support hub for what goes on, the activities that go on there. You know, it's main corridor up through Minnesota. There's no stopping that. You know, there's many opportunities that are gonna be coming Orinoco's way. It's just to grab onto the right ones. You know, one of the unfortunate things I seen have happened was when Pine Island was granted permission to put in the bridge to nowhere. Because right now, what happened to the bridge to nowhere, none of the money, the tax money is not gonna come to support Pine Island off that property. It's been sold, it's on its third property owner since bridge was put in. And now the Prairie Island community bought it. They outlined all of the properties that they sold, that they bought. And now they've taken that whole parcel, says now, when they build their casino, whatever they decide they're gonna do, because nobody's got any control of it. And it comes right down to it. They're gonna get done with that. They're gonna go, hey, Pine Island. Our roads need to be resealed. Well, we're not getting any tax dollars. That don't matter. You do them anyway. They're your roads. We didn't buy the roads. We bought the parcels. That's gonna be a challenge. For them. For them. For them.
I guess I would see a challenge in balancing the needs of different groups. So I can tell that you're gonna have homeowners, single family homeowners, you're gonna have businessmen, businesswomen come. And how do you balance the needs of what the city needs versus people who already live here? Either side of the highway. I've always seen that as a unique challenge in Orinoco, that we are one city, but almost completely split down the middle by a major highway. So how do you properly look at these decisions and these recommendations and make sure that you can try and meet as many needs as possible, but also make tough decisions sometimes. And I can see that as probably a challenge moving forward, that there are going to be things that come to the committee that might not be, the decision might not be what people want to hear, but it's going to be in the best interest overall instead of like one unique party. So probably something that I could see we have to overcome.
And to kind of piggyback off that, one of the things that comes to mind for me is the challenge of growing a city when there's a portion of the population that doesn't want to see any growth. And so my question to you is how would you address that issue and possibly reassure people that are very resistant to the growth that we have planned for the city? What is it that you would say or do that would help to bring them along with us without them feeling completely shut out? And in all fairness to you guys, I don't even know that I have an answer to that question. I'm hoping to glean some wisdom from you two.
Well, in all fairness, that was kind of part of the future land use plan. You know, a lot of that's been outlined. I think when it comes to future land use plan, you don't need to hold people's feet to the fire that no, this is where we intended that to go, not here. You know, like the issue they had a couple years ago of trying to put stuff up there behind gas and go to the east between there and the neighborhood. That wasn't a good fit for what they wanted to put in. So we just needed to keep it in mind. Future land use plan says where the city center is gonna be kind of around the new interchange. And we need to hold people's feet. Now, if this is what we're gonna do, you're gonna fall within this. We're gonna play with it. If not,
Thank
you're
you.
gonna find more struggles. And it's not struggles with the community, with City Hall and stuff, as much as it is with the neighbors that don't want it right next to their house.
I mean, like you said, there's not a great, I don't have a great answer for that. I do always like to fall back on the idea that everybody likes to have a voice. So, I mean, even if the answer isn't what people want to hear, open lines of communication and discussion and, you know, giving people as much information as they can and working with people, I think that process, and keeping that idea in your head goes a long way. So, I mean, sometimes the answer is still no, but if somebody explains to you why the answer is no, or, you know, or if there's optional choices, I think that sometimes that can help with that type of process, but there's no easy answer to that. I don't,
Right.
I have more to learn, I think, on that one.
Well, and both of you with your answers have actually helped me because I think that in answering my own question that I couldn't do 3 minutes ago, I think that being willing to listen to people and to hear them out and to let them know they've been heard, even if we are not making the decision that they may want. And it will be challenging to do what our city, our future use plan says that we are going to do, but yeah, when we've created a plan, we need to stick to
I
it.
think that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to public hearings. You know, a lot of times you have to hold public hearings for things to fall in place. It's required whether people, whichever left side of the line they fall on. But it's important that they hear, they have a concern and somebody's gonna try to address it.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna kind of ask you a question and get your comments. We're bringing in CETA, an EDA that's gonna be started here in Orinoco. We've already had the original meetings, first part of it to get started. How do you see that fitting and how are you gonna coordinate with what CETA has with what the Planning and Zoning Commission does?
Interesting. I think that, when it comes to CETA, kind of have to watch it a little bit, kind of like you do with the, DMC in Rochester. I don't wanna see Orinoco give somebody the authority to spend money at the city council door. Okay, that'll work. You don't wanna give anybody spending authority like the DMC has in Rochester. That just doesn't need to be. You know, if we're gonna give people spending authority, I wanna see elected officials doing that. Not somebody appointed that we don't know what their time frame is, how long you're gonna be there. You know, what's the time frame of DMC is like 25 years, if I recall, right? You know, the time that they're gonna be doing different projects and keep adding stuff, but they have the authority to spend money. Well, that's such a good idea. I think the city council needs to do that.
I think a partnership and equal voices is the best route always. And I can't, me personally, I'm not an expert in anything. So when you have somebody come in who maybe is an expert and they're working with, is there gonna be local citizens on the EDA? Is that correct? Or, yeah, okay. I don't know. I mean, I think as long as the final authority has equal input from the authorities in Orinoco, bringing in somebody who has already done this in another town or has more experience in growing a smaller town, I wouldn't see that as a bad thing, but I definitely would see it as a partnership or, you know, somebody that could definitely make recommendations forward.
Did you have a question, Jim?
Address your question, Jim?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting on how all of this works and fits together, you know, and we do have to have some good coordination and communication for it to be effective.
And I think too, you guys probably have noticed, because you've both lived here long enough, to know how planning and zoning was some years ago. And you're seeing it move in a different direction now, where exactly what Paul's saying, people's feet are being held to the fire.
Mhm.
So if there's conditions on land use, or if there's conditions on an application, we're following through with that.
Mhm.
Where in the past, some of that has been allowed to slip just because of resource constraints.
Mhm.
And now you're gonna see that moving in the other direction. Gonna be able to grab a hold of those loose ends. So,
I think with that, with the city having services today, you have a little bit more of a grip on what's going on. They didn't have that grip before, because they were gonna be providing those services.
And we have a Sunny.
yes,
Who holds our feet to the fire?
In Sunny's position, I made the comment to her one day too, I says, we needed her in place for 20 years. You know, everybody's kind of held back on it because it's too expensive, it's too expensive. Look how expensive it's been not doing it.
Mm.
You know, how many times have we gone through studies and paid for this, paid for that, and not having somebody there to keep the direction steady. Somebody's gotta hold the stern to keep it going straight. You can't have an election and all of a sudden, hey, we're not doing that anymore. You can't have that. You hear too much that. Some of the minutiae you're talking about in our hometowns.
Do either of you have any further comments you'd like to make?
I just want to say thank you. Appreciate your time and allowing me to speak, and it's nice to meet all of you.
thank
Nice
you.
to meet you too.
Well, I think you guys got a good challenge. You're gonna get to decide which one's which. So, but anyway, thanks for the opportunity. to be here.
Well, thank you both for being here
Yeah,
to
thank you.
speak with us. We appreciate it so very much. And we are, we're absolutely thrilled about your interest in the future growth of the city. At this time, I'm asking the commissioners if you are prepared to make a recommendation at this time that will be passed on to the city council regarding our candidates, or do we need more time to discuss this? And if so, we can move this deliberation, this vote to our March agenda. So how are you guys feeling about this at this moment?
You want to put it off till March for a decision to be made? That would be my recommendation.
Well, since that is the recommendation,
So you
That
moving
leaves us
Yeah, it-
without, yeah.
would you like to state that?
I make a motion that we hold off on making a final decision, get a chance to discuss it until our March meeting that we have.
Is there a second?
Second.
It is moved and seconded to move this conversation for this decision deliberation into the March agenda. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote.
Just one question. So it's 7 seats and that's just how it is and that's been that way and there's a reason for that, or
Well,
I
it's,
guess my first, I was not positive that we had a certain number, that it could be this, it could be less, but it can't be more. And I'm just wondering, why is that?
Sunny,
Yeah,
you
and
wanna-
my understanding is that you want to have an odd number so that you have the ability to have
Makes
a
sense for votes.
clear vote,
Yeah.
yes.
I just know that over a year, we'll hit a meeting or two where all of a sudden we just can't have a meeting because we don't have enough people here.
Mhm.
So, for
Not on
example,
my
it's
watch.
like if 7 makes sense, then would we not want to do 9? Is there a reason that we wouldn't want to do 9? We're not getting paid, so it's obviously not a financial thing. just curious as to why that is and how set in stone it is.
That's an excellent question. Do we have it in our charter or bylaws, Sunny, as to a set number for commissioners on planning and zoning?
I believe it is set in your code and I'm trying to find it.
You're 7.
Thought it was.
Membership shall consist of 7 members. Council selects 2.
May
And
select
it is.
2.
May select 2 council reps from its own membership. Members shall be appointed and may be removed by the council. And then it does go on to terms, vacancies, so forth, but it is hard coded right now into the ordinances as 7.
Right, I figured that it probably was.
Right.
My thing was just,
Just
Yeah, no,
wanted to
why?
know.
We're working hard so that we always have a quorum. Okay,
That's-
that what
that's the reason
happened.
behind me questioning it.
Yeah, what
knowing that we
happened
haven't met
last
it.
year, yeah, we're not gonna let that happen again. I don't think. We're gonna work very hard to make sure that we have a quorum. There's too many things that are moving ahead that we have to turn around and be able to respond to the people that are gonna be coming. Then we've got a 60-day rule that we've gotta work with on some of these things, right?
Brings up a good
Sometimes.
question though, of just making sure that both of the applicants have the time, that they don't have conflicts or see too many conflicts with the particular schedule we do have with meetings right now, which is currently once a month. Set.
I think that was one of the questions on
It
there.
was, and I don't think either one of you indicated you would have trouble making a Thursday night meeting.
That is correct.
So, yeah.
And my rule, just so you know, is always a meeting should last no longer than it has to. So we are, we're pretty efficient, I think, and we, you know, that's why the agendas are set at least a week ahead of time and you don't always get the paperwork in at that time, but I'm still assembling, but the deadline is a week ahead of time so that it's set and we're the decisions that are made by this group and council and other groups as well, I don't want to diminish any of that. But the decisions are too important to make on the fly. So that having that information well in advance is important to providing that time for absorbing, reading, absorbing and thinking through pros, cons and not just what decision should be made on this particular case, because we're the days of making a case by case kind of decision are gone. We are setting the pathway forward that the rules apply to everybody equally. And so we're not interested in setting precedent that's going to create problems for us down the road. And that's the perspective I bring as city administrator and bring to the both council and to this group and will as executive director of the EDA too for Orinoco. So that's
So is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote.
Like some chat bubbles that came up when you.
There's some comments out there.
Oh,
Sunny, click on chat.
thank you.
Sorry.
oh, see, we need, you know,
Got teenagers.
yes. Oh, yeah, Dana's, yes. You cannot discuss these candidates or any business outside of the meeting. We will get into open meeting violations. So when you're tabling this discussion until the next meeting, that means you're going home to independently and
Internalizing.
internally
Mhm.
absorb, think about, think through, and come back together to discuss at the next meeting,
Mhm.
not go
Correct.
meet at Tilly's and
No,
have a quorum. You'll send me into palpitations.
we don't want to do that to you.
No, Thank you, Dana.
Was that the only?
Yeah,
Okay.
when it popped up, yeah.
So, third time's a charm. Is there any further discussion? And if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of moving this to the March agenda for a decision, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And so making the recommendation or moving the candidate recommendation for filling the planning and zoning commission vacancy is now moved to the March agenda. That is approved. So thank you so much, you two, for being here.
You have to make it too difficult.
Stick around.
It's great to have great candidates. I'll tell you what. So our final order of business tonight is old business. And we have a few things on this agenda. I'm looking for my one. I have lost my last page of my agenda.
Old business.
I will find it. Yes, I have old business sitting here amongst all this stuff somewhere. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Here we go. So the first item is continuing the discussion of previous city materials concerning the FLUP PowerPoint 2016 study and determine what information may need updating or is missing. Where are we in that old business process?
Does everybody have the 2016 report?
I do not have the full report. I believe that I have leafed through it in the office here.
I know early on, I kind of like bombarded everybody with a whole lot of information to absorb, and that's kind of collectively, those kind of things. Do you need anything more? Or do we want to start going through that? Quite honestly, you have to admit, we've been pretty busy with applications. pretty
Absolutely.
nonstop.
Well, and public hearings.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of public hearings.
A lot of public hearings.
I was kind of wondering if, and I know this isn't a great way to do it because we need to think of it comprehensively, but if we just choose one of them for next month to really look at closely,
I agree.
and then we can, maybe then after we've looked at one at a time, then we can come back and talk about them because it's kind of like overwhelming to think about all of them at
To
once.
have 4 items on there.
Well,
That
and-
makes sense to
Yes.
people.
No,
It
it
absolutely
really
does.
does. And the 2016 is the most recent one. Minus the one we had for a couple of years ago. Which went more in depth of what there were for planning. Guidelines, different things that way, but. The other one from 2006 also has some pretty good. Background information that when you compare. The 2006 to 2016, they both kind of came up with the same end results, okay, of what was going on. That's why I was just kind of questioning as we look at this. Does everybody have that information? Otherwise, it's, something that I think we should get.
We need to make sure that, that everybody's.
So probably what we need is truly just a list of here are our resources, so we all know which ones exist, which ones we can refer to, and we all have a copy of the same ones.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I've got,
I agree.
And are they available online? Is that what you're looking
Well,
at them?
and I guess we'll get into it a little bit here of the stuff I've worked on with the code, trying to get it all into a single document instead
Yeah.
of 300 web pages out there. But along with that, maybe it truly is an appendice at the end. That's a list of all of our resources. Here's our studies.
Yeah.
what we've got.
So we have a history.
Well, so we all are looking at the same thing when we're looking at our resources.
Yeah. I
Absolutely,
think that's great.
absolutely. Well, and so with that being said, we're probably not in a great position to make any headway on item A, correct?
Other
Other
than,
than
we can work together on developing that
that resource.
that list of
Mhm.
documents, and then I agree with you, you know, if we take them chronologically. So you start with a little bit of history and you see, like you are saying, a 10-year span between a couple of documents, but there are some real trends and thoughts
Oh,
in there. So we may be able to move fairly quickly through that once we get those in place and make sure that, like you say, everybody's got the same set of documents.
Excellent.
I like that plan. One of my concerns, if we're gonna do a meeting by meeting, is we do keep getting a lot of applications in. And might be something that we'd need to look at, setting up a little mini meeting or a workshop, so it might be outside of our Thursday night schedule to make sure we get through these in time to be able to do something with the information.
And then just bring a report of that meeting to
We're
the
gonna,
meeting.
I don't think our applications are gonna decrease.
No,
I don't think
So
either.
that's where I get concerned that we just won't have enough time at Thursday meetings unless we wanna be here till 1 in.
And we'll be forever playing catch up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and I think the information stuff that we might wanna start using sooner than later.
I would,
I don't know,
as
that's,
staff, I would rather see a workshop
yeah.
interim, you know, in between meetings, as opposed to a meeting going to 1 o'clock. I think you reach a point where everybody's kind of like a
Yeah.
little bit loopy or.
Well, and I think a workshop situation would be really great because it would bring all of us to the same point of understanding. And once we've achieved that point, we can move together as we go forward, rather than, you know, this kind of thing.
If
That
we
makes a whole lot of sense.
do it that way, potentially, some of the folks that are out there that have helped pull some of this information together, or maybe our planning services or resources could even come in for an hour of our time and walk us through some of this information.
Mhm.
That would be helpful,
Yep.
most definitely.
Okay,
Well, since we have these things on the agenda for tonight, can we just dust over them and if we're not in a position to have an in-length conversation, then we'll figure out how to proceed from this point. So we've got a game plan for item A. Thank you.
so do you have everything that there is, Sunny, to be able to get it out to
well,
everybody?
if all of you, you know, kind of wanna send me what I've given you. And then collectively, we should come together with I'll be able to develop a comprehensive list on everything.
It's all right there.
Okay, well, I'll start with you and then make sure everybody's got it.
Okay, so moving on. Item B, update on code revisions. Separating zoning matters from administrative matters within the city code. It's Kathy and Sunny, and determining recommendations and potentially drafting new code for updating the minimum lot requirements in Orinoco. I know you've been spending time getting your daughter settled in Florida. I don't know how much time you guys have even had to dedicate toward that since our
Together?
last meeting.
We haven't yet.
Okay.
But do I have information sitting in a Word doc for me and Sunny to start just saying, this is planning, this is not planning, to work our way through? So at the end of this, right now, we have thousands of lines of code that's just called city code sitting out on the website.
Mm.
And there is no good way to search through it. You can't do a Control F and find everything you want to know on anything, really.
You have to go through it line by line.
You have to understand, it's cumbersome, probably is the best way. Even Google would have trouble trying to find some of the stuff that's out there. But it exists, so I've been scraping it off and putting it into a single document that we can all refer to. As far as what the code is now, we could push what it currently is in a single document to the website and have it cleaned up a little bit for everybody to be able to see. Even applicants that are trying to come and figure out how to build or put something in would have a much easier time working with this. But once that's out there, the other piece is to start separating, because we are growing. we need to spend our time looking at forward thought, forward movement as far as what's gonna develop, where are things gonna develop versus things are already in place. Things that exist are the ones that the city council should be looking at, you know, people who've been here for 25 years, the developments in place. They're the ones that are wondering, people's trees need to be trimmed or lawn needs to be mowed. That's already been in place, and for my thought process is, we're here to look at the future. We're not here to say, oh, it's been here for 25 years. To me, that's where you get some of that separation of what is planning and zoning and the forward thinking we do
Mhm.
versus city council, which is management of existing. So that would be my thought, and I'm hoping with Sunny, me and her can take our document and say, here it is as it is today. And what I would envision is ultimately there's two documents in there. I'm sure that we'd have to have a public hearing with the city council to officially separate it into two pieces.
Mhm.
But I think that is really where we need to get at some point.
Well, it sounds like you're making headway and that's very encouraging. So thank you for diving into that.
Yes, and honestly, what we'll probably end up needing is a third version. That would be our EDA group. So for what it's worth, there you have it. I'm a policy wonk, so I've like played with stuff and
We love that about you too.
That's great.
clients, you know?
So I know how busy Sunny's been and everything has been going on with the city, so. You know, just trying to get through all this stuff is.
Just don't be overwhelmed when you look at how many pages the document is. It can be searched, so.
Well,
Very
thank you
good,
for that,
thanks.
Kathy.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So I don't know if that's something we want to talk about next month and send out the single document so people can see what it is. It really won't be changed from anything that's out on the website.
Other than being in separate,
Other than a single document, you
Yeah.
can actually flip through, and the way I've got it set up, it's got a table of contents at the beginning and you click and it'll drop you to that spot of the
Wow.
document. So
that is a huge
Yeah.
advance right there.
that's just how I have to think about stuff. So, but that is hopefully gonna make our lives easier. So we're not trying to spend our time working through the details versus get to substantial issues is where we need to be spending our time and our resources.
Yeah.
And
And we need our people that are putting in applications and trying to figure things out to have an easier path to figure out
Absolutely.
as well. So it sounds like, because of your efforts, we're well on the way to that. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Item C, continue discussion of ROW issues. Responsibility for tree trimming, grass and weed maintenance.
Those wonderful right of ways.
Is that gonna be more in the ordinance than it is gonna be with us too, right?
ultimately, I would say it should
Yeah, it
be.
should be an ordinance. isn't it?
Currently, everything's all jumbled together.
Yeah. And we're still on that one going back a few weeks or months. We're at $50 an hour for our fee, is that correct?
Or,
Or anything that's for the ROW?
well, it depends. It depends. You know, the fee schedule right now is under review and will be at council at the next meeting in whole or in part, with revisions.
You look at
Go ahead.
service, labor, hourly, for just about anything, $50 is pretty low. I mean, you
Well,
have to have somebody come out to your house to do something. You're looking at $100 an hour
Right,
minimum,
Easy,
right.
yeah.
you know.
I know, and
so
a lot of the, like, for lack of a better word right now, co-pays, to get a service person out, $150.
Yeah,
very
yeah,
frequently.
once you get somebody to.
Yeah,
So if you're gonna go through
as a
making
deposit.
changes, you don't wanna make it changed, or we're gonna be at 50 and then 1 year later be like, wow, we really shot ourselves in the foot going with 50. We should have just
jump
went,
$100.
$100 right out of the gate.
150, yeah.
That's where I think we don't hard code in fees, and what we need to do is just say, when we look at our code, you split it apart and you put all the fees in a single sheet, and the city council once a year at the very beginning of the year approves the fees and all the code should just say, refer to whatever the city council. did.
And that's where we're at
That's
right
simple,
now,
but-
is that.
Those will be separate as well.
That
Absolutely.
is one of the things that we should be changing with the code.
It is on there right
Yeah.
now. We do have that set up, but we're missing a lot of the things that were on that schedule that should have been on there.
We're not, yeah, and the reason I say it depends is because there are some instances where there's tree overhang or that sort of thing that's actually creating a public safety hazard. And then it becomes just a city has to take care of it at no cost, because that's part of the taxpayer thing. But if it's a code violation where we have to send a letter to somebody, you need to take care of this, they don't do it, and we have to send somebody in, then we want to make sure that we're covering our costs.
So that's what we're kind of looking at, is that we're also looking at having a little bit more teeth on if somebody doesn't follow code,
The fines.
the fines that are associated with that, so we have some ability to go after and make sure they get things done.
Yeah, say we approve an application under certain conditions, and so they get the application. They do what they wanted to do, and then they
Forget
the
about
rest
the
of it.
conditions.
And
Mhm.
so then we have to have some teeth to be able to go back and say, okay, you were supposed to have that done by this date. So every month it's not done, it's going to cost you this much money.
Yeah,
And that is part of something that is stated very clearly and plainly, right? So that there's no real pushback from it. Well, I didn't know, or you didn't tell me, or it's not posted anywhere.
Which is why we are, I'm so big on documenting. And, Colleen's minutes are stellar, and that's not any kind of to diminish anybody before you, but I'm just saying, that's important. And then, having clarity in the recommendations from this group that then go to council. And I love resolutions, my council members will know, creating that documentation that's clear on supporting, council supporting or denying based on the recommendations that you make. So that's all part of that.
the other thing I was gonna mention too is for us to take a look and what it costs for us to go to Stantec and to do these, engineering write-ups and that to make sure that we're covered, and not coming out of the city's budget by doing it that way. And I think a lot of that, we've been paying for it out of the city's budget. And somehow come up with, it doesn't meet with a certain criteria that whoever's putting in the application has got to pay for the engineering costs.
And that on our fee schedule, there are 3 instances where we can collect planning, engineering, and legal fees. But it's all based on preliminary and final plats. Those are 2 of them. And I think grading permits, that also allows us to collect some fees. But by and large, some of that, where the engineer and planner are thinking that these are funds, their fees are gonna be recouped by our application fees. Our application fees just aren't sufficient to do that. And to a certain extent, there are a couple of different schools of thought. One is that, a city, you cannot unduly enrich the city by overcharging. You can only charge based on what you actually incur to provide that service to the taxpayers, because remember, it's all taxpayer money. So part of one school of thought is that the city should just be providing that service. And the other is, more we should collect every dime. And I'm thinking there's there's room in the middle there.
There,
Mhm.
So just from, not jumping from here to up here, but certainly, building our way to covering more of our costs will create more of a fund for doing more of the things that we want to do.
Instead of
road.
paying for things that we didn't anticipate, that take
Right.
away from those things we were
Right.
planning.
Right,
Mhm.
because we're just not budgeting.
Right.
And it's also people that come in with an idea and say, okay, I'm gonna pay a fee, let the city engineer do it. And then turn around and say, well, I really wasn't serious about doing it anyway. We spend the money and the person that's doing it was just, well, what if we did this or what if we did that? And that way you'll get the actual firm people that are interested in actually making a change or doing a project.
and I think on the flip side of what Jim just mentioned is making sure people understand that, okay, if we're gonna charge them for engineering fees, then we can't expect them, depending on what it is, we can't expect them to go get an engineer and have engineered plans as well before we even talk about it, because then they're getting hit double, you know? For instance, I think like the wall, and I know, Jan Tronson had an engineer, we had an engineer. And that's between engineers, private and public, there was a lot of money spent in engineering, so we should come up with a policy. If we need engineering, decide who's gonna do it, depending on the project too, but who's going to do the engineering, or where does my engineering responsibility end and the city's begins? So we're not so the citizens or the residents aren't incurring that cost twice. Cause that's huge, then it's going to deter them from.
Well, that's
You're
gonna have a
Trying to
negative.
give businesses and other
Right.
opportunities into town. You look at what's the cost to do all this, and are there other towns that would make it a more attractive proposition? So you wanna encourage that. At the same time, we don't want it to be subsidized, but you're right, paying twice to do the same job just makes
Right.
no sense.
The other thing that there is, from what I understand from the setup right now, is if we have a private engineer come in to do it, Joe Palin still turns around and wants to review the documents to have everything set up to what they have. So they're still gonna review right now. Okay, I mean, that's just the way the setup is.
And I think there's probably a certain amount of that, the review that needs to happen, but not the
Not a full-
re-engineer.
Right.
Well,
right.
if
To me,
a-
the review would be done as part of our service that we're contracting for, where they're helping support our application.
You gotta
That
get a
is where
review.
our review
Yeah.
should be getting done, is
Yeah.
making sure, did their engineer know what they're talking about?
Well,
Does it
and
make
what-
sense?
And what I started to say is that, is there a way to put, Sunny, this question is directed to you. Is there a way to put the applicant's engineer and our city engineer together for the purpose of collaborating on that to come out with a finished product? That the fee would be paid all at once and perhaps it would come in close to paying one or the other of them as opposed to having to pay both of them to come up with that finished product that's going to meet all the criteria
Well,
of an engineer?
Okay, I'm gonna say kudos to, the city's engineer and planner and attorney, because
Yeah.
those are the areas, as a city administrator, I really need to rein in costs,
Mhm.
typically speaking. And to their credit, all three of them have been really good about not necessarily responding to a resident or whoever's request.
Mhm.
They know, Stantec has been with us for years. They know Joe Palin, they pick up the phone, they got, and for them, for Joe Palin, for example, to say, I need to touch base with Sunny and see where we're at and where we're gonna go with this, because one of the things we wanna make sure that we're doing is, in the case that you were talking about, if you're looking at a project, we need to have what I consider a developer escrow agreement, where they're putting some money up front. We hold it, we draw down from it to pay our fees. He calls it a cost share agreement. I think that you've seen those. So at some point in time, we're developing that. There's nothing that, and developers are savvy. They have their own team, their own engineers, architects, planners. They know how to pull together a project. But it does need to be reviewed from the city's perspective to minimize risk to the city.
Yep.
And hopefully, the developers, people will have investigated, our code online or whatever, ask the questions of City Hall to get closer to what we need to see, so that when our city consultants step in, the review becomes more cursory than it does in-depth analysis and, not that there is an analysis in it, but it doesn't become a design thing. It's just more kind of, yes, this is meeting. And can still, provide a report to the planning and zoning and or council that's gonna cover our bases and protect the city, because as we were talking earlier, much of what we do is risk management and mitigating any kind of thing that could come back on us, because, and that's why open meeting law is such a, I know of a city, shall remain nameless, but they lost their insurance through the league because of open meeting violations. And it cost more than 3 times the annual premium just to get that coverage, and it was less coverage. So the coverage that the league provides, it should not be underestimated. But it's also incumbent upon city staff, elected and appointed officials to really pay attention to that too. It's not.
Well, and I think that
important.
you answered my question, because what you described to me, if I heard you correctly, is that you are kind of maneuvering into a position where you can be a liaison to help guide the applicant and to help bring in the city engineer to overlay for the purpose of advising at a whatever, portion of a fee, or so that it's not too full-blown,
Right.
Engineering fees for plans. So you are in fact beginning to create that relationship
Right.
between applicant, yourself, and engineer,
Yeah.
lawyer, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, Paul?
Is there some kind of a checklist maybe that can be put together to make sure that the city engineer has the city engineer knows what the city needs, but to have 2 full-blown reviews of something and a questionable whether or not you really want to spend the money for that, but and then be a checklist developed to make sure all the boxes are checked, to make sure we have stuff that meets the city's criteria at a more reduced fee.
Well, I know on this application, you've got a little bit of a checklist here
Right.
that would,
And all of our applications do that, and we have a flow chart for, for the applicants to walk through things. And I think tonight's example with, Mr. Keen had his own engineer, who did, much of the work, and so then it was just more of a review on our side. And then, going back to him and conditionally, he needs to provide documentation that's gonna support those setbacks, those utility easements, those kind of things. And then, so I'm expecting that our engineering invoice will be less. So that's,
Because he did the work.
that's, yeah, and that's kind of where I see much of this headed as we do more development. You know, that the trickier part will be probably in this downtown historic area where, well, you know, who knows, you know, how that'll come into play down the road, how that gets developed out or redeveloped. So we'll see.
I think we veered off of our right of way conversation a little bit, but I think that the conversation that we had was really beneficial for helping to clarify where it is that we're all going. And that's what every once in a while, I think we need to have those conversations where we're able to remind ourselves and each other, yes, in fact, this is where we are still heading. So I think that that was helpful.
So I do have a question back on the right of way. Do we need to propose an ordinance to city council? Because it wasn't the problem that our current ordinance is vague about
Was
trees.
unclear who's responsible for what.
Yeah, that's a
And,
big
and
key.
that was
Weeds
still
and
back then.
grasses are okay, but trees,
Yeah,
Well, and we had Kane too that was talking about that at one time too, right?
yeah,
You know, where his crew should go and how
Yeah.
it should be done.
trees and weeds.
Yeah,
We have it up on our street, you know, that the city doesn't necessarily mow everything, and the question was, you know, does the homeowner, if it's the right of way, and the city is saying, we own the right of way, then who maintains that right of way? You know?
You're talking like out in the, just out in front of,
Yeah,
out by the road there?
yeah.
So, yeah, I guess I've just always assumed that,
I always mow mine,
Yeah.
but, I know that there's been times where the city some years ago, and Paul probably remembers this, some years ago, like up on West Center Street, the city would come through with a mower and mow the weeds. I mean, before all that was developed across from me, they would come in and mow.
I mean, we actually have the city come out and do ours. When, you know, our street, as it comes in between the houses,
Mhm,
that they'll go back and keep everything back a little bit, but
mhm.
it's not like every week. You might have it like once or twice a season that they'll go in and do that.
Well, Sunny, is it appropriate for planning and zoning to make a request like that of the city council? To where we're actually requesting what was it that you said, Jim?
Well, it's really, I don't know,
think
was it
we
an
make the
ordinance on
proposal to
who's,
them.
where's the
That's what I mean.
responsibility lie?
But it's more of an ordinance. That's where we
Yeah.
were trying to get
Right
this.
now, everything's jumbled together, so
Yeah.
a suggestion for an ordinance can come from us, or it can come from city council.
Going either direction at the
It's
moment?
just philosophically, supposed to be future looking versus this has been growing, this tree's been here 25 years, you know?
And so you bring up a good point. I was thinking about that earlier, is what happens when, I mean, because this is out there. I know places on our street, this is out there, where trees have been there for years before we put anything into ordinance or code that says the homeowner is supposed to mow up to the blacktop or mow up to the street. Wasn't always blacktop. And you can't have a tree in your right of way. You can't plant a tree. Well, if I didn't plant that tree and that tree's been there for 45 years, who's responsible for that tree then? Is it me or is it the city? You know, so it's those things. I mean, and we're going to, we're gonna face that,
well,
right?
yeah, because I'm going through a little something on the side that begs a question for me, when like out up to the road, I mean, so you own the land up right to the road. Right to the road. Now, the city has an easement, right? If
Yeah.
you need, if the city, but nobody else besides the city has an easement on your land, because it's yours.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to make sure of that. I figured that is that way,
Right.
and that's my side project that I have going on. But if that is your land, then, and the city just has an easement to be on it if something had to be done. I don't know why anybody would think that the city should be coming out and taking care of your property for you. I mean, is
Unless
that-
it's a public safety issue that there is, which is. where
Yeah, I
this
mean,
one is at.
a tree falls down and comes across the, the ditch or the boulevard and it's out into the street. Yeah, it's a,
However, it's
Big
your
safety.
property and you can't do anything with it.
right, I'm just saying, I understand where, yeah, if it's a safety issue, that
Yeah.
absolutely we should, I guess, who makes the determination of what is safety and what is maintenance?
But
Because that
isn't-
question, this whole conversation has come up numerous times in questions from.
I mean, do we have a lot of, have we run into this where people just don't want to take care of stuff up to the street?
We have.
Yeah, we
We
have.
do, okay. I guess I have been unaware.
And they've
of
been
that.
notified a few times that they have to take care of it and then we go do it and then we end up billing them for the work that the city has done. That's where I was looking at the $50 an hour type situation or whatever amount
Whatever it
that
is,
might
sure.
be,
Yep, okay.
to be able to cover those.
But we are not talking about a tree falling onto the street.
Right, you're talking
Because-
regular maintenance, like overgrowth and it just.
Yeah.
Or a tree hanging in, so if you're, let's say,
If it's hanging,
I've
then
had
that's
it,
different.
yeah,
but-
where you try to come out of your driveway. Or it can be anywhere and it's hanging where you can't see oncoming traffic.
Yeah, we have that
Distorting the view.
every year.
Yes.
You get out to the end of the driveway and by the end of summer, I have to go out there with a chainsaw and cut everything back.
Mhm.
Or your car ends up being stuck out into the street for you to be able to see if somebody's coming.
Right.
So,
Really, there's several different types of easements we're talking about. Then we're talking about easements for access for like utility. But then there's also not necessarily easements, but it's really public safety issues that may or may not even be on an easement. It might be you've got a large tree growing and it may not be on land that's in an easement, but if it threatens the safety and security of the community, that's when you look at, are there ordinances like a dangerous dog? You're not gonna have an easement to have a dog, but there's still gonna be ordinances that deal with things that are public safety, because that is what government's for, is to navigate those type of issues.
So how do you define a dangerous tree?
Public safety would go under public safety somehow.
I mean, trees fall down.
They do.
We had one fall on our tree from our neighbor and.
But it's also
it
things that are
becomes
covered
our
in homeowner
responsibility Cause
policies.
it was our fence that came down, even
Right.
though it was the neighbor's tree.
Right, but those are the types of things that
That
are
are covered in
already
law.
out there and litigated in law, and that's
Say
what
that, that's
insurance.
litigation.
Yeah, and that's what insurance policies are written to as
New
law
can of
that's
worms.
already on the books.
Right.
So trying to sit at a zoning meeting and figure out laws and
Right,
litigation when there's
exactly.
entire attorneys and firms that specialize in that type of thing, to me, we should just go out and figure out what have other communities done and throw an ordinance out there. And it shouldn't be on our agenda for a fifth meeting in a row or however many meetings this has been.
But I think it kind of goes back to what Sonny was saying. Is it a public safety hazard? Like a limb hanging out where people can't see? And maybe it belongs to the city, so the city has to do it, or it's in that right of way. I think it's just defining who is responsible for what. I think it just needs to be very clear.
And part of it is, I'm gonna push back just a little bit. I think I heard you say that you own the land up to there and you can't do anything with it because it's right away,
Mhm.
right? But I'll push back just a little bit, is that you probably can do stuff in there. You can't plant a tree. But I'm guessing you could build a snowman there. you know what I'm saying? I mean,
You
there,
can't landscape there, right?
No, I think
People
you
plant
can.
flowers, people,
No, I'll push back on that, cause we, on First Street, there's people that just last year or the year before last landscaped. And some of their land, a number of people actually, just up the street from you, they put landscaping and part of the landscaping went into the right of way. So then when they're doing water and sewer, that was destroyed and they didn't have to fix it because it was in the right of way.
Mhm.
There's someone else I know on First Street spent a lot of money on landscaping and the front part of that landscaping. It's their yard. They're meticulous about mowing and keeping it up. And when they had landscaping company come in and do landscaping, some of it got into that right away and it was destroyed. With the water and sewer
I will-
project.
Well,
That's a little bit
understanding the
different
easement,
deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
that's a
tell you, though,
different
this
deal,
dates
but
me a
it's still right away. So I think it's, to me, it's more of an understanding of, okay, what can you do in that right of way? And who's responsible for what in the right of way?
So
You know
when
what
you're
I'm
calling it
saying?
a right of way,
It should be called an easement or.
what exactly?
A right of way-
I'm not familiar with,
Right of
is
way
it
and
like 10
easement's about the
feet from
same
the,
thing, isn't it?
yeah, what,
Say that again?
Not
No, I don't
necessarily.
think so. I
No,
think the
they're
right of
different.
way is actually, they could build the road out that wide, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
then would the
'cause
right of way
I'm
just keep
saying
moving?
The road moved.
if they said you got a 5 foot right of way, so they made the 5 foot road 5 foot wider,
They
then
have
would
an
the right of
easement.
way move 5 foot further onto your
It
land?
goes for the center of the road, and that's always been there for.
Yeah.
So with the right of way, who's allowed onto that right of way to go do whatever it is they wanna do? You own the land, but it's not an easement, it's a right, who is the right of way for?
Right,
You don't own the right of way.
you don't.
No.
Right, so what I'm saying. Okay, so you don't own the land.
But as it says
Well, when
now,
you,
we
when
have
now,
to
I
take
have
care of it.
somebody at the county. That says you do own the land up to the road. You look at your property line. Goes up to the road. You own that, period, black and white, no gray area.
And we are saying you don't.
No, they're
The
saying there's an
the
easement.
city is, and that's where I continue to question this,
So
because it's just exactly what you're saying. And there's something in our code that you have to mow, I think it is that we have to mow up to the street, the edge of the street.
So it says somewhere that the city owns the land. Out by the front of our roads.
The right of way.
No, what it says
They have
is
an
the city
easement
or easement.
controls,
Hmm?
the city controls
Okay,
the
control.
right of way.
Okay,
See, I mean, easement is you own the land, but they have a reason if they had to be on it.
there's a legal right for somebody and there can be private easements or public easements. So for
Right.
example,
Those are
Valewood
recorded.
Mansion in Rochester, when I was on the board there, we had a number of different covenances and easements that we were going through thousands of pages of legal documents, trying to sort out hundreds of easements that had been granted over years to various private landowners and public groups.
Okay.
And so when we were in negotiation with the clinic, there was a lot of stuff when I was on the History Center board years ago that we were going through easements that were 50 years old and 100 years old and having to track down heirs. So when you talk about an easement, it just means they have access, but they don't own the land. You can still technically, at least there, you can do stuff, but you still had to make sure they could get through if they wanted to.
Right, my big question is, with getting up to the road, who's they?
So there, that would be a right of way though, more than a right of way for a road, you're measuring from the center of the road out, and the right of ways, the distance can vary based on what type of road it is.
Okay,
It could be a county road, it could be a state road, it could be a city road, and your right of way out. And the width of that road is gonna be determined by what type of road it is, how thick a road it is, what type of traffic you expect on the road.
and so who is the right of way for?
The right of way is for vehicles, for public. So
Okay,
that's gonna be different than, it could be a public utility easement, it could be a public easement, or it could be a private easement. A public easement might be, you have private land, but it borders a lake and you have an easement for a walking path for the public to get to the shore.
So
I mean,
If
there's a lot of different,
being public, am I allowed to go up and down the road then, a certain amount of feet off of my road onto what I would think is other people's lands and say, I don't know, do
Can
some,
you park there?
do some work with a bobcat on that land?
Bobcat, no, I don't know that you could, that would be a good legal question.
But could you
But
park there?
Is it an easement or a right of way? If it's a right of way, you could certainly physically be on the right of way. Keep in mind, I think right of ways and easements are different things. And maybe that's something we probably would talk about at our workshop when we could get a lawyer to write up some definitions for us, so we're all coming.
Give a little definition to it. This drainage ditch down here is a drainage easement coming through over here. Okay? And and the city owns that because it's, I believe the city owns the whole thing. I think Sean Tracy just comes up to it. But the road out here is 100-foot road. The right of way is
50
divided down the
foot.
middle, 50 foot on each side. That's the right of way. Just to clarify, there's a difference between a right of way and an easement.
But I think there's some right of ways that are even more narrow than that in
Yes, there
different
are.
places of our
This
city. Even on
within
the
your
same
city,
road.
you can-
Absolutely.
And again, it speaks to what kind of road is it?
Yeah.
And
Is
that's,
it arterial or is it secondary, tertiary? You know, how are they defining the street?
a lot of times
there's
a
some
cul-de-sac,
places-
you'll define how wide a road has to be in a cul-de-sac depending on what school buses are gonna go down there, what garbage trucks, how
Yeah.
wide you need to make that turnaround at the end is dependent on the traffic that you're intending to see there.
And there's some houses, I know one in particular. Their front porch is in the right of way. Because of
The road changing.
the road.
Yeah.
changing.
The biggest difference from my perspective, based on my knowledge, experience and training, the biggest thing is an easement is a recorded document. That's going to, conversely, a right of way is more,
Understand.
yeah, it's, I think it might be by
In the
state
code.
law.
It's usually in the
Right.
code.
Right of way would be put in when the plat was done.
Right,
As they're putting down roads, they're determining that.
they're determining that based on the.
And
road
that's, if you do like a
definition.
subdivision, you're gonna see on the subdivision
Right.
when they plat the road, how wide the road is. And what the,
Yeah, I'm more wondering what other people's rights to be doing stuff on what I figured was your land.
That you take care of.
That, well,
you're
that you,
required to take
yeah.
care of.
So I'm just saying, you know, if I so choose to go 10 feet away from the road into my neighbor's yards and do whatever I feel like doing there. And they come out and say, get the hell out of here. And I go, no, this is my right of way. Yes, I'm messing with stuff on your boulevard, but it's not really yours. It's my right of way to be there. Can I do that?
You may clarify what right of way means. I think it means right to pass through. I don't think it means right to go destroy or disturb.
Or camp out.
Disturb would be disturb would be a
Right
good,
away,
good word there.
if
for
you've
that.
got your road going through, you've got your right of way on both sides. You've got your road going down the middle of it off, and you'll have some developments will have sidewalks as well. Now technically, it might be you've got the right of way and they put the sidewalk in, people have the right to traverse on the sidewalk. They don't have the right to destroy the sidewalk. Because you know, if you have one in front of your house and it does get damaged, the city's still gonna come back and assess you to repair that.
Right, and I do not have a sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
either.
and I-
Nobody in Orinoco. does.
Yeah, and I am,
But in communities that do, that's where the sidewalk might be on your land and your right of way, but you're responsible for its upkeep.
right,
Does
yeah,
it mean people can walk and destroy things? No, but can they walk and use and take their dog along there? Yes, they can.
sure, yeah. Question is
But-
more, can they use construction equipment on that? Which evidently they're not supposed to be using that sort of equipment out on the public roads anyways. That's evidently a massive no-no right out of the gate.
You're back to
So the
disturb.
person's already doing what they should not be doing before they even get to my property. So, but that, yeah, I wanna dig into that right away a little bit more to see.
That's why I always questioned it.
The big
So I-
number, that was,
Oh,
the-
that one, yeah.
yeah.
So I have a growing list of if we do this workshop, what we would want to cover, and I put down, in addition to going through all the resources and an overview of the code, probably also making sure we're all clear on how the definitions of zoning work.
Right.
And the different things that will come up when you're talking subdivision developments and different plat maps that'll come through as people want to send through subdivisions our way. And all of the words, the easements, the right of way, the public safety, all of that is in my growing list of what we need to cover at a workshop, because I do think we all need to have that common knowledge and the common definitions in order to really start moving everything forward.
Well, and we have to have that knowledge when we get asked by residents.
Yeah, and
Because
it's
that
gotta
was-
be
that
where
has come
we're
up.
saying the same thing,
Yeah.
because
Yes,
otherwise, if
you-
you go to two different people. Get two different answers
Well,
and.
and it doesn't have to be, it also has to be the same thing, but it's gotta be the right thing. It's
No,
gotta
I
match
hear
what the
that.
law
Yeah, right.
says.
Yeah, and that's for like, what I'm getting from the person from the county is different than what I'm hearing here. And the person from the county knows this because they actually had to go through the same thing. People were dumping stuff on part of their land. So they had to battle it all out, and what it ended up being was, they ended up having to post on their land saying, private property. But it was enforceable that those people could not go on there and dump stuff on there, period.
Cause dumping is illegal. I mean, that's even within the county and the ditches out there, there's
Right.
certainly.
So does what you're dumping matter? Does it matter if it's weeds or sticks or snow or gravel?
Well, when you get into snow, that's
You
something
think-
that's different because they can put that. into-
That's something I'll put down on my list.
Yeah, so basically somebody taking material and dumping it onto your land or the land that you have that is actually a right of way. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Right away or easement.
I put
easement,
right
whatever it
away,
is.
I
yeah.
just put right away for definitions and then how does it work? Because it's really, it's stuff we should know, but it's not necessarily things that are gonna drive applications, are gonna drive the development. It's gonna drive the ordinances though for the city, so it's just good information.
And so with conversations like these that are in old business, that get moved to the next meeting month after month after month. Is it within the, within the margins of permissibility that we can discuss these things in a workshop situation? Arrive at a general consensus, bring it back to the agenda for the purpose of voting on it? And we would be okay as far as all of the
Open meeting law.
open meeting laws? Thank you. Can we do that?
Well, as long as you publish, I think that we're having a meeting that's an open.
And that
meeting
allows
for us to
people
have
to
a
come
quorum
to the
to be able to
workshop
do it.
if they feel that they
Because
want.
even a workshop is a public meeting.
Yeah.
And you have to post at least 3 days in advance. The other thing is to keep in mind that if you're going to be wanting to recommend changing an ordinance or a text amendment like we recently did, because one of the things that remember the chart
Yeah.
said one thing, but the narrative said something else, and we needed to align those. So it takes a public hearing,
Yep.
our favorite thing, and then also a recommendation to council. So the public hearing can be done either place. My preference for those kind of things is this body to make recommendation so that we keep those meetings moving faster too. And it helps your understanding of zoning code more too. So that's kind of my preference, but yeah.
So there's one final item D in old business, update on RFP for planning services.
I will have that for you next meeting.
Okay,
Wow.
so do we need to,
Great.
Do we
Well,
need,
when you add something on, I need to bump something off, so.
do we need to have a vote on moving these 3 items, A, B, and C into a workshop scenario? Or can we just go ahead and do that and then bring them back into old business to be voted on at a later point in time?
Yeah, you don't need to move
Okay.
that, it's just. Because it's,
We'll
those
set the
aren't
agenda for the
actionable,
workshop at that point.
yeah,
Mhm.
those aren't the actionable items at this
Okay.
point.
Very good. So we're through with old business. Thank you.
And I've got a list.
I'm glad you've got a list, girl.
I understand growing lists.
So my question at this point is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
And it is moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
I.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
8:55 PM.
The meeting is adjourned at 8:55 PM.
Just so you know. Okay, which is,
Well, this was kind of a long one, wasn't it? Don't you think?
No, I think this is kind of average for us, as long as we've got those old business items.
Oh,
They
well,
seem
we'll-
to
That's
be,
why we need, that's why we need
Yes.
workshop.
yes,
Boom, let's keep
I
going.
agree.
so that's,
None
that's a
of what we're
week
talking
in
about
our
gets
hour
followed.
itself, right?
We just need to find the legal answers
And do it.
and document them so everybody's.
And to bring back the documentation so we can actually vote on it. I like that plan.
Excellent.
Well, it's not even voting on it, it's just, this is the law, you have to
Yeah.
follow it. That's how it works, and it's really just.
Very good. It was so nice to meet you, Krista.
You guys,
Thank you for coming in. Paul, thanks for coming in
all I'm
tonight.
doing is giving you. All I'm doing is, okay, so this is part of the island. Yes. If she said that she thought that she was stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
I was not aware of what was going on and everything else that way, and it's like.
Krista, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks me.